Welcome to a very special Play Disc, the musical podcast where normally we do deep dives into full albums, but today we have an interview with a special guest. I'm Jon Porrabill.
I'm Harrison Porrabill.
And today, after we're done introducing, we're going to cut over to an interview with Glenn Case. Glenn is a very prolific singer-songwriter based out of Spokane, Washington. He's a multifaceted man, an independent songwriter, a member of the Grammar Club, a rapper, a polyglot, a world record video game player.
Glenn Case is a very strange man.
Yes, he is also, as you will hear very shortly, irrepressible. He has an infectious enthusiasm that I really hope you guys love listening to. We enjoyed this conversation a whole heck of a lot. Glenn is promoting his new album, Growth, which, as of the date of publication, just came out a couple days ago. It's on all the streaming services, so go check it out. He wrote all the songs, he played all the instruments himself, did all that jazz. It's a great album. I enjoyed listening to it a lot. It shows a lot of, dare I say, growth. It was just right there. I couldn't not.
It
was like Roger Rabbit with the shave and a haircut. We talked a lot. Now, I've known Glenn personally for a good 15 years-ish now, so he and I had a lot of reminiscing to do. A couple of things we talk about during the interview that might need a little bit of explanation before we begin. He and I met on an online songwriters community called Songfight. You can find that at songfight.org. What they do is they put up a title every week or so, and artists write and record a song of that title, they submit it, and everybody goes and gets to vote on who did the best take on that title. We, full disclosure, have a new song together. Glenn manages a novelty hip-hop group called the Frontalittle Squad, and I am a member of that group. So we have a song that's up on Songfight right now called Four Corners. You can go listen to and vote for if you want. It's silly, it's stupid. Maybe it's funny if we did our jobs right.
I should get around to listening to that.
Over the course of the interview, you should. Over the course of this interview, we talk about that. We talk about Songfight and the rush of inspiration. We talk about, what else? We talk about his new album. We talk about the experience of recording in a pro studio versus in his own home. We talk about what has inspired Glenn to realize that our time on this world is precious and really double down on his efforts to get all his ideas out in the world. And lots of other stuff. Anything else to add, Harrison?
No, I really just wanted to get the primer out of the way.
Yeah, fair enough. We did some talking over you on this interview, I think.
Oh, yeah, no, it's fine.
Without further ado, here's us chatting with Glenn Case. Play Disc! Welcome, everybody, to a bonus episode of Play Disc. I'm Jon Porrabill.
I'm Harrison Porrabill.
And with us today is Glenn Case, singer-songwriter, rapper, video gamer, and various other talents.
Wait, what? Hold on, I thought we were getting the actress on.
I get that a lot.
When John first met you,
Yeah.
I would have been about 10 or 11 years old, which is about the time I started becoming conscious of actors as, people.
Sure.
And I definitely mixed up Glenn Case and Glenn Close a lot.
That's fair. You're definitely not in the minority that way.
So first interview question, what do you have against Dalmatians anyway?
I was about to actually make that exact same crack, so thank you for saying it so I did not have to.
Yes. All right.
I was going to mention something about bunnies would be the other thing because, Fatal Attraction as well.
Right. So for our listeners, Glenn Case is an independent singer-songwriter based in Spokane, Washington. He is extremely prolific, and he is here helping to promote his brand new album that just launched over this past weekend, Growth.
Yes, I'm happy with this one. I like it quite a bit.
Yeah, and you were gracious enough to provide us with early access, so I've been listening to it for several days and really been enjoying it. And we're not going to do a full deep dive like in a normal episode, but I have some questions that'll relate to the source material.
Excellent. I'll be happy to answer whatever I can.
Great. First, I thought I'd throw in a more lighthearted question and ask you real quick. What inspired you? You reached out to me last week to reunite the Frontalittle Squad. What prompted that?
Well, there's a few things. I tend to, boy, how do I go about this? It is partially practice for an upcoming thing that I'm going to be working on with the Grammar Club.
No kidding.
What?
Yes, absolutely. So there's
I was
a
asking earlier if the Grammar Club was off limits.
no, not at
Ladies
all.
and gentlemen, we have a Play Disc exclusive yet again.
Yeah, no, it's very much in the early stages, but there's something very special coming up with the Grammar Club where I asked the guys if they would be okay with me kind of taking the lead on an album as far as a concept. So I don't want to get too much into the concept other than to say that it will be based around us as high school kids. And we will have several guest appearances from artists who will be portraying our teachers.
I am already imagining Clone High meet Strangers with Candy.
You have the right idea.
Hell yeah.
Yeah,
That's
I love Clone High.
terrific.
Love Clone High. That's one of
So we'll
my
be
favorites.
hearing some more Deaf Author coming up soon, then, huh?
Yes. You know,
love it.
there's always a danger of that happening. But with Frontalittle, what did actually? I tend to go back on some of these projects, and I talk about projects that I'm going to end up doing, and then I'll put them off, and then I'll put them off, and then it's like, oh, okay, here
I
we
can
are,
relate.
10 years later now. It's like, okay, maybe it's time to revisit this. Like, you know, it's the last time that a Frontalittle thing happened was like 7 years ago.
Yep.
And so, yeah, it was just on a whim. But partially because of the Grammar Club thing, because I knew that, you know, it's good to kind of get into the practice of trying to keep 11 to 12 people on the same page.
Herding cats.
Yes, herding cats is a great way to describe it. So, yeah, that there were multiple factors, but I also thought, well, this would be fun.
Also,
And it
it
was.
occurs to me, for the uninitiated, what is Frontalittle exactly?
Yes. So this dates back to 2003. I discovered Songfight via MC Frontalot, who is now called the creator of the term nerdcore hip hop. So it is rap about nerdy subjects. I discovered MC Frontalot on a message board / group called the Sockheads. It was fans of the TV show Syphil and Ollie. And I was a huge fan of Syphil and Ollie. Some random person on there that I've never talked to before or since said, hey, for you guys, there's this nerdy rapper named MC Frontalot. You should check it out. That sounded appealing to me, so I checked out MC Frontalot. And at that point, he had the current song fight that was going on at that point was the Gonna Be Your Man song fight. And that was I believe, also in 2003. And I heard it, and I immediately loved what I was hearing, partially because of the Can You Picture That, like Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem sample. But just like it,
Which didn't make it to the final album.
sadly but understandably, because,
Yep,
you know,
yep.
legal style stuff and everything. I submitted the next week thinking, well, I've been writing nerdy raps myself since probably the late 80s myself. And so I can relate to this. I wrote something, I think, in around 1989 called Rhyme Expedition. No, that was 1991. I wrote a rap called Rhyme Expedition, which was essentially like Dungeons and Dragons, like fantasy style rap. Like with my Casio keyboard.
That's awesome.
I wanted to be a rapper until I didn't. But yeah, so I based on
Let me
that, it's
throw a
like,
deep cut at you. Where in the chronology did MC Buttwipe and DJ TP Roll come from?
MC Buttwipe and DJ TV roll that like next to no one knows about. The fact that you know about that's great. So that dates back to my friend Jason and I back when I was in junior high. He was initially kind of a bully that I didn't like, and he would pick on me, and then we became friends. And we used to trade rap cassettes back and forth. And one of them was the LA Dream Team. The Dream Team's in the house, ladies and gentlemen. The Dream Team. And he didn't have the cover for that one anymore, so he made a cover where he made it where it was MC Buttwipe and DJ TP Roll, and he took like the picture of the two whitest guys that you can imagine from like one of those Sears catalogs, and he put those pictures on the cassette deck and called it MC Buttwipe and DJ TP Roll, and he put like fake gold chains on them, and it was just this amusing, funny art thing that had no connection to any rap. And so it's funny that this comes back to that whole thing of earlier when you were asking what prompted me to come up with to do a new Frontalittle track. Well, years, like decades after he made that artwork of MC Buttwipe and DJ TP Roll, I decided I was going to make an album by MC Buttwipe and DJ TP Roll. And
taking a little throwaway joke and making a whole concept album out of it.
Exactly.
That's very on brand for
Yeah,
you.
I was about to say, isn't that kind of the aesthetic?
Yes. Well, and this is the precursor to Frontalittle in very important way. The idea of Frontalittle was essentially my online friends who most of them, if not all of them, I had not met in person. But, like, let's get my friends who have no business rapping, let's get them to rap. And let's have fun. With MC Buttwipe and DJ TP Roll, it was the same exact thing. It was let's get my friends that I do know, in person, let's get them to rap, even though they have no business rapping, and let's have fun. So really, Buttwipe and TP Roll was a stepping stone towards what would become Frontalittle. And I would say,
that's so cool.
In a way, Frontalittle like leads to Grammar Club, where it's my friends that maybe have a little more business rapping. Because
yeah, I was about to say, don't besmirch Grammar Club by comparing them to Frontalittle.
No, Beefy is a phenomenal rapper, but if you listen back to his earlier stuff, it's not that great. It's like you can see that some of the tools are there, like the pieces are forming, and it didn't take.
He had the enthusiasm. That was the key ingredient.
The enthusiasm, but then and I was just revisiting some of Beefy's old stuff, and I listened, to his, when you listen to his newer stuff in comparison, what you have there now that he didn't initially have there was the confidence. Even if
Beefy's
he's
got
not
the inexhaustible energy of a professional wrestler cutting a promo.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is a perfect way to put it. He comes across with this confidence. Whether he's actually confident or not, he portrays that confidence, and it shows. And Rachel says that Beefy's her favorite rapper, even above Frontalot, in the nerdcore.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
More than you?
Well, I don't
you
know.
gotta separate them between rappers and rapper husbands, and
Yeah, there's been times when she'll talk about one of our favorite musicians is Ellis Paul, and she's been given hell and a couple things where it's like, well, I would think your husband's your favorite. Well, duh, of course, but outside of that, it's kind of a different thing.
Right. What's your favorite book other than the Bible?
Yeah. Nicely put. Yes.
The Tijuana Bible.
That's the one.
Oh, yeah.
We did some deep cuts in that digression there. So the Frontalittle Squad is a rap group that Glenn is a part of as the deaf author. Full disclosure, I'm also a part of this rap group. Frontalittle Squad hadn't done anything in about 6 or 7 years, but there is a current new song. It should be available on songfight.org by the time this interview goes up.
Absolutely.
Where listeners can go and vote on it. Go friend flood us, please.
There you go. That'll happen. Yeah, no,
for
7
all
years
30 of our listeners.
It's like between 6 and 7 years since the last one we did, which was the rap about Tekken.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so proud of my verse on that one.
Yeah, you really have come a long way. Like, you listen to your first raps and Drew Tate's as Mumblecore.
Oh yeah,
his verse. I listen to it now. It's like, this doesn't even sound like the same guy. He you guys have grown up and grown into better rappers.
You and Frontalittle Squad have basically taught me how to rap.
That
I want to take a little bit of credit here, just a little bit.
Fair enough. Yes.
In that
Harrison
when John was recording
actually
the Frontalittle stuff, he had not heard much rap.
Oh,
true.
True.
And I would like to take some credit for properly educating him.
That's true.
Several years down the line.
Between the two of us, Harrison is a much bigger hip hop head.
Very nice.
Shared
Harrison.
a lot with me. Yeah, when I did those early Frontalittle songs, the majority of the rap that I had heard to that point was MC Frontalot.
That's fair.
But, you know, from there, it was an exploration into whole genre. A couple of episodes ago, we did an album by Atmosphere.
Oh, wow, yeah.
When Life Gives You Lemons.
That's the best album. That is their best
yeah.
album. Start to finish.
I agree.
Start to finish. That one's just, it's a masterpiece.
We spent an hour talking about that one on our show.
I need to listen to that episode. That's,
Yeah. It definitely is.
Yeah.
So, pivoting back into interview and promo mode here. Glenn, you're insanely prolific.
Yeah.
You do like multiple albums a year. You're always working on several projects at once. You did like January. You do these No Fake Fridays.
Yes. To me, one of the things I appreciate that, you know, I'm kind of known for being prolific, but it has stepped up, I think. I've tried to step it up ever since hearing about the passing of Brother Machine, Seth Gibbs.
Oh, yeah.
He died at the age of 36 of cancer. God. And that is far, 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 far too young. He is one of the most incredible songwriters.
Too.
He was,
yeah.
but the part of him as far as being prolific is that he had hundreds, if not thousands, of unreleased songs that he didn't feel were good enough to be released out into the wild. And so when he got the news about the cancer, and it was aggressive cancer, he was working on his last album, and he didn't make it, unfortunately. But I believe that there is talks of his brother going into the studio and wrapping all of that up and finishing it. And, you know, that may or may not happen. But that really hit home with me because, you know, obviously having met him, he was a dynamo. He was one of my favorite songfighters that there ever was. And
there were weeks when he would put out 4 songs and 3 of them would be multiple people's top 3 of that week.
Exactly. Yeah, he was he was phenomenal. He was so incredibly good. And so when I thought about it, like if I had died at his age, my album Throw Money that I put out would never have been made. And that was sobering to me to realize. And then between like all of these other deaths that we've had with like Bowie and Prince and everything, it's like, and obviously this is not to compare myself to like a Prince or a David Bowie or even a Seth Gibbs, but the thought is,
why not? You're a Prince. You're what? Let's go even further. You're Elvis.
I actually do have a comedian friend who calls me the White Prince, and I thought that was pretty funny.
I mean, while I was thinking about how prolific you are, I was honestly thinking of MF Doom because of all the different projects you have outside of Glenn Case.
I love you now for that. You realize he's my favorite rapper on the planet.
Also, you both have a very irreverent tone.
You would love our podcaster friend Kenny, who hosts the podcast Earfloss. One of their first episodes was MF Doom. I think it might have been their first, actually.
Yeah.
And he just can't shut up about MF Doom. He loves MF Doom.
He breaks things down to the syllable. One man's waist is another man's soap. Son's fan base, no, the brother man's dope. And you're putting all of those syllables together. It's like each one of those syllables rhymes with one another. Yeah. And he'll just line up 13 syllables, and there's 13 more syllables that all line up with those. Oh, and by the way, I'll hit you with 13 more that also rhyme with those last 2. He's a monster. So incredibly good.
Yeah, and I mean, he also is very prolific, and he also loves adopting pseudonyms without telling anybody.
See, there you go.
Yeah.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. That's actually a very good point. But the way that I look at it at this point is like they were brilliant, and when I think about the fact, it's like, well, I'm still living, I'm still breathing. I have time. Like they're out of time. They can't do anything more than what they've already done. And when you think about that, it's this sobering thought of, okay, I'm still here and I have time to create. And I want to try to make the most of that time that I have remaining. And so this album, Growth, explores that theme quite a bit, actually.
It does.
Yeah.
Put a pin in that because I'll be coming back to it.
That is a little bit more profound than I was expecting from this.
Yeah. This is what happens when you have an album whose opening track is called Time and
the
whose closing track is called
Death. And that was intentional. That was very much
a really peppy song about how your time is going to come.
Yep. Exactly that.
I was wondering because with your mission to really get as much out there in the time that you have. You've done so many songs and so many albums.
Sure.
That Urban Dictionary thing estimated you had like 440 songs, and I feel like that's low.
Yeah,
I feel like that's on the low end.
I thought so too. And if you were to count all of the ones that I've done under side projects and everything, then that was in 2009. That Urban Dictionary entry was put
no
up
wonder
there.
it felt low.
Yeah, but it was.
So
it was interesting because I started going through ASCAP to release all of my songs to note them for anything that I've released, and I think I have less than 300 that I have registered with them, but they're all under the Glenn Case name.
Right.
And they are all original compositions. I think even the ones with that they were referring to for that Urban Dictionary, if they were counting covers, or if they were counting the side projects like Frontalittle Squad and Tripped and MC Buttwipe and DJ TP Roll and the Deaf Author, you add all of that stuff up there, it's probably much closer to 1,000. But I would be the first to say that at least the first 300 to 400 of those songs would be blackmail if they were ever released.
I'm the same way. I count my debut as the one I came out with in 2009.
Yeah. See,
and even though I came out with like 3 albums before that, I don't count those.
Yep, that's how I feel. Throw Money was the one for me. That's where it really
it's weird.
started.
The first song you ever recorded for Songfight, I think, despite being very, very sophomoric, that it is still pretty good and defensible.
Harrison, just to clarify here, you're talking to me, not to Glenn.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Oh, was that unclear? My bad.
No, if he was talking about me, it would be Mumbo Jumbo, where I decided to be a nerdcore rapper right after hearing about nerdcore rap being a thing, because I thought, it's my goodness, it's my people. I can relate
John
to this.
was really annoyed with you that week.
I believe that.
I felt like I had turned in my best work ever, and then, which at the time was true, and then here comes this guy who's clearly trying to be the next MC Frontalot, and it's working. Okay. Back to the interview, Glenn. I was building up to this question of you put out so much stuff and you have so many different projects. Do you consider your work in like tiers? Like for instance, for Growth, you said you were really happy with it. You got a vinyl printing of it, which I know you don't do for a lot of your other stuff.
Yes.
Do you consider Growth to be more of like a major release from Glenn Case?
Yeah, and I would say that is kind of the way that I'm starting to go with some of these, because I might have some of them that I'll maybe only put on Bandcamp. Mm-hmm. Like my January, it's like all 31 songs, blemishes and all. Here's everything that I did for this month, and so it's only going to be on Bandcamp. I'm not going to release that in a official capacity. And I did a vinyl test for Growth using Kunaki. I would not feel comfortable charging money for the quality of it. It's not bad quality. It doesn't skip, but the sound is incredibly quiet. To the point where I was going to consider putting it out on sale, but I don't recommend anyone. You might be able to find it, but I don't recommend buying it on vinyl. Not through Konecki at this point. I love their CDs.
Okay,
so
we're not promoting that. Okay,
no,
sorry.
no, it's okay. No worries. Again, if someone wants to buy it, you're going to pay $35 and you're going to have a very quiet album.
Well, I mean, who buys vinyls to listen to them? You just hang them up on your wall.
There you go. And if they want a $35 piece of
yeah.
art, then yeah. And I love the art. The art partially came first. It's one of my ex-coworkers' daughter. My ex-coworker's daughter made that art,
wow.
and I saw that, and I immediately thought, that looks like album art. And I think that was the comment that I did. And so I ended up talking with her, and I paid for the rights for the use of that, because,
wow,
it's only right to do. And the title Growth came from the artwork, because you think growth...
They go together really well, yeah.
Thank you. Growth is not necessarily always a good thing. Like if it's a growth on your brain, you wouldn't consider that to be like that's not necessarily always positive. You would think of it as a positive word, but it's not always a positive. I thought playing around with that was a good call.
So was Growth, another question I had about it was, did you book studio time for that, or did you record that all in your home?
All in my home. The last time that I booked studio time to record anything was Throw Money, and it was really nice to be able to do that. Had a successful Kickstarter that was like $6,000, which was really great. But I realized I cannot afford to go into a nice studio every time that I want to release an album. And so starting with 2014, the album I put out after that was called This Album Has 12 Songs on It. Spoiler alert, it is an album that has 12 songs on it. From that point on, I thought, I'm just going to go ahead and do this myself, and hopefully I'll get better at it as time goes on. And the fact that you had to ask, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe I'm on the right track now.
Perhaps. Yeah. To my semi-trained ear, I guess.
Yeah. No, and I listen to stuff I did 2 years ago and think, oh man, I could mix that so much better now.
I have the same thoughts about my older stuff, although I haven't been as musically prolific lately.
Sure.
Is it mainly just the monetary thing? I was going to ask you, what are the benefits and downsides of recording in a pro studio versus your own basement?
When you have a nice pro studio like Jared Crabb has, like that I recorded in Throw Money, he really put a lot of time and effort into that studio. It's built to specifics. The specifications of the building are exact. He has, the soundproofing that's up, and like there's baffling or whatever they call it on the walls, and like these, he's treated the room in every possible way to be able to get the very best sound, and he really knows what he's doing with mixing and mastering. And he gave me a heck of a deal. I think I paid him a couple $1,000s. But even there, in comparison to what it should have been, was a bargain and a half. But when you start throwing the idea of a couple $1,000s in there, I don't know if I've made a couple $1,000s on everything that I've sold on Throw Money.
Right.
And so it's just cost prohibitive. Mm-hmm. It's the same concept as doing...
Especially when you want to release 12 albums a year.
Yes. I've gotten to the point where I do want to try to find that fine line between quality and quantity, though, too.
Okay.
And, and that's the trick, is like you get like a band like Guided by Voices that releases so many albums that it's hard to keep up with and keep track. Uh-huh. And in recent history, my thought is like, I'm probably going to average about 3 albums a year.
Okay.
I'll release one on April 1st. Every year that I possibly can. I love doing that. There's normally some sort of a joke that's hidden, sometimes in plain sight. And I release albums on my birthday.
Well, that's cool.
Because why not? It's like it's an easy release date for me to remember.
See, that's why you release 3 a year, out of laziness.
Yes, that's part of it. That's part of it. And you may have noticed with Growth, it's February 29th. February 29th, mm-hmm. Exactly. And I just love the idea of Leap Day album releases because they can only come about once every 4 years. This will be my second Leap Day release because the one before it 4 years ago was Local Stealth Celebrity, was my last Leap Day release. Which was a nice nickname that was given to me by Nathan Lansing, choir director at SFCC. He called me the Local Stealth Celebrity.
I like it.
Yeah, it's.
I mean, people may have heard your music and not known it, right? I mean, you've done some stuff. You did the theme song to Captain S.
Oh yes,
you did.
I did
you had a couple of songs that were in Rock Band.
Yes,
right?
Yes. I have one. Sweet Canadian Mullet was in Rock Band, and that partially came about because of my Captain S connection.
Wait, Captain, is that the formerly Captain Stupendous?
No. Harrison, do you remember Captain N, the like Saturday morning cartoon? It was all Nintendo characters.
So this is
somebody online did a Sega-based parody of that.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And it's like that mixed with Saved by the Bell and all of that. That's PBC Productions, based out of New York City, and one of the principal actors in it, who plays the jock, is Shale Riley of the Grammar Club.
Oh, nice.
So Shale was the one who ended up asking me if I would do the theme song to Captain S and a song called All's Fair in Love and Sega.
Huh.
And so I did those two, and they liked those two songs enough that they asked if I would create original songs for every episode of the 10-episode show. And I did. And something really neat ended up happening with that, because so they were feverishly working behind the scenes before the episodes came out every week to try to get it in on a deadline. But they started adding more and more editing to it, and special effects, like where they would put this main character, Captain S, in the video games. Mm-hmm. So they would superimpose his face like on the characters from the games and everything. And they... Right. As the show progressed, the writing got better, the editing got better, And it became, I think, something much cooler than what they had initially set out to do. Like when they realized that they kind of had something special in their hands, so they did more. And then that was how I ended up doing the Screw Attack theme song for Hard News as well. So if you've ever watched a video like the Angry Video Game Nerd or some of the stuff that's on Screw Attack, and you hear da 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 ba da bum bum, that was me.
I had no idea. I've been watching those videos for years. I've known you for years. I had no idea that you made that music. Oh my god, I can't believe that. So yeah, lots of people have heard your music and didn't even know.
That was one of those things. Yeah, kind of a behind the scenes.
Wow. Well, I'm gonna shift gears here. From knowing you personally, right,
yes,
and from seeing your public-facing persona in things like your YouTube videos and on your Facebook account, I would describe you as a relentlessly positive person.
You know, one of my friends talked about how if someone kicked me in the junk, I would probably compliment them on the kick. That's not true, but I have that reputation. Yes.
Yeah, you're always cheerful. You're always enthusiastic about any project you're throwing yourself into. And I wanted to know, do you find it difficult to maintain that persona while also writing songs that have conflict in them?
Oh,
Growth in particular, you have these themes of mortality and regret.
Yeah, and I think part of it is what a person chooses to project on social media too. So like maybe if I'm feeling like agitated or whatever, you won't see me post about that online as often. So I think that's maybe part of it. I definitely have my moments where I'm not the nicest person to be around, where I get frustrated and like, like the same as anybody else in that regard. But really ultimately with any of the songwriting stuff, it's just deciding, okay, this is what I'm going to write it about. And with Songfight, I think it helped me to realize when you're writing any song for any genre, the idea is you got to start with one piece of the puzzle. And if you think of it as a puzzle and you lay down that first piece, that helps you now to define what happens next because you're building off of the first piece that you laid down. Songfight provides that by giving you a song title first. Okay, well... Yep. They give a song title, George's Hand. I hated that song title, but I thought I had just written 2 songs previously that I liked enough that I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use that. So you start thinking about, well, what can I do with this? And like in George's Hand, like you look up what George's Hand is, and the definition I'm not crazy about, but what can I think of it as like these guys after George's hand, like to be the boyfriend or whatever, and it just it goes from there. But it's because you have that first piece laid down that everything else can come together.
And funnily enough, George's Hand is probably my favorite of your songs.
Thank you very much. I like how that one turned out as well.
Yeah.
So I'll shift gears again for a moment here.
That sounds fair.
You've talked about Throw Money a couple of times.
Sure.
Is your big studio album. The opening lines of the song "Sweet" on that album. Potential is one thing. I've heard I had a lot, but where does that begin? Where does it stop? Have I crossed the line between the things that I could do and what I have already done? That was 7 years ago.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you still reflect on this lyric. Do you feel like you have unrealized potential still?
Always. Yeah. And, you try to fulfill it to the best of your ability, but it becomes, okay, this is what I've already done. How can I improve upon that? How can I keep going, and how can I improve upon that while I am still alive, breathing, and able?
While there's still time.
Yeah, that's always going to be a thing, because at this point, my thought is that I could potentially have a larger audience after I'm dead than I've even had while alive. But but that's a big question mark. I could be just as easily forgotten and whatever. But there's a possibility that there are people who are not even born yet who might possibly hear what it is that I'm doing right now, and that's kind of cool. Like that there's a possibility, and so that alone is kind of worth it. That's where my head is with it.
Well, I'm listening to Growth around the house and in the car, and I have a 4-year-old who is absorbing every song lyric he hears.
Yes.
Including Frontalittle Squad, What the Fucks.
Uh-oh, you better censor that one.
I'm gonna have to bleep myself.
Well, and the beauty is, we'll say it's WTF, of course. And
Yeah.
said it. Well, and Frontalittle Squad happened.
Do you still keep up that gimmick? Or do you intend to still keep up that gimmick?
So here's the thing, right? I did a few songs where I tried to slip by a verse that didn't have it, and every time Glenn catches me and he's like, "Hey, let's put it somewhere else."
It's not in there. It's not in there. We got to bring it back, because that was kind of the joke.
I remember there was one where he skipped it, and at the end there's like a radio announcement.
Yes.
What
I meant to say was, what the? Yeah. No, that's one of my. And it was just so amusing the way John said it in the first one, in Space Cadet, that I said, you have to do that every time. From now on, that has to be a thing. And so there are two things about Frontalittle, is that
it's just funny because he doesn't actually have that much of a potty mouth.
No, but he did at the time. He did for that one thing, and he's been paying for it ever since. But
I have been.
Oh, I know that feeling, John.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thought, though, is there are two things about Frontalittle that you can count on. There are only 2 members of the squad who have been on every single Frontalittle track, and they're both talking on this podcast right now. It is myself and John are the only 2 that have been in every Frontalittle track that has ever been released. And in every one of those, John has repeated his catchphrase, WTF.
Yeah, well, I mean, Glenn, you were just talking about how you've never fully realized your potential and how it's a lifelong journey and all that.
Absolutely.
What have you been focusing on in recent years? Like, is there anything you've been actively developing or trying to improve about your music or your expression?
That's a great question.
What has grown on Growth?
And partially, part of that is that realization that, we're all gonna go at some point. We don't know when. And so part of that is the acceptance of that and saying, okay, I know that time's going to come. So what am I going to do in the meantime? And so I'm trying to think of what the songs are. Today's news. Another story. It hasn't broken through new territory. It hasn't changed the way that things are going. We are all still gonna die. But if there's comfort. That one was an interesting. That was a jam. Most of these are January songs. I don't know if you knew that.
Really?
About half.
So this is still really new, really fresh material. Then.
Half of it. About half of it is from this year's January, and about half of it is from last year's January. And so it was a matter of taking the songs that I felt belonged on this album. You try to find homes for them. A lot of times I will, and I'm not necessarily answering the question. I realize this here, but I think in a roundabout way I'm about to.
You can play Coyote with
it works out. Well, and what I've realized with 2 of the most recent albums that I've done here is how nice it can be to be able to draw from. When I did Throw Money, I was drawing from Glenn Case's greatest hits. I had essentially all of the songs that I had ever written up to that point. I had that big of a group of songs to choose from and to just pick the 12 best ones that I had. There was thought of Throw Money being a double album. I'm so glad that I didn't do that. I just picked the 12 best songs that I had. And since then, I've done a lot of very gimmicky things that are fun, but they are gimmicks. And then when you lock yourself into that, you're not necessarily picking the best songs. You're picking the ones that fit the gimmick. And
MC Baccarat endorses that statement.
See, there you. I don't know if you saw on April 1st of last year, I released 2 albums. One is called So Much to Do. The other one is called So Much to See. Have you seen those albums?
No,
Okay.
I must have missed
That's
that one.
okay. Well, I release a lot of albums, so it's tough to keep up sometimes. But the gimmick involved, like, I talked earlier about April 1st albums and how I love to throw them in there, and sometimes there's some sort of a joke that's in there. Well, the joke, the joke of sorts is in the song titles themselves.
Is it all Smash Mouth covers?
Well, it's let me tell you, the so much to do. Here are the song titles.
Did you gloss All Star? Is that what happened?
No. The song titles for So Much to Do are Somebody Once Told Me, The World Is Gonna Roll Me, I Ain't the Sharpest, Tool in the Shed, She Was Looking Kinda Dumb, With Her Finger and Her Thumb in the Shape of an L on Her Forehead. That's the song titles for So Much to Do. And the song titles for So Much to See are Hey Now, You're an All-Star, Get Your Game On, Go Play, Hey, Now You're a Rock Star, Get the Show On, Get Paid, and All the Glitters is Gold, Only Shooting Stars Break the Mold.
So part of the reason I'm laughing so hard is, one, that's a great gimmick.
Gloss All Star. Yes.
So one, that is a great
in fact
gimmick.
gloss
But I'm
it.
also laughing because John was doing our tech test like literally an hour ago.
Sure.
And before I knew he could hear me, I was just making sound, and on autopilot just started singing All Star.
It's like you knew. It's like you knew. By the way, the best song to come out of that is called And All That Glitters. That is the best song to come out of either of those albums. But the problem is...
Ross Durand did something like that for a February album writing month. I don't remember which year, but he did it not with Smash Mouth, but with Bob Dylan.
Oh, see, very nice. I've thought about...
He took all the song titles from lines that are in It's a Hard Rain's Gonna Fall.
Oh, very nice, very nice. I've thought about going back on one of these April 1sts and doing Never Gonna Give You Up, Rick Astley, but we'll see.
Oh, that would be perfect.
Yeah. One...
And I did... Talking about being beholden to a gimmick, is I have an album that works sort of similarly. I wasn't taking lines of a song, but I arranged the songs so that the first letter of each song title formed an acrostic message.
I did that for Actual Animal. It's one of my albums called Actual Animal.
I shouldn't be surprised at any idea that I've bothered to execute on. You've probably done better. And several times,
I don't know about
right?
that. I don't know about better. But with the second album by Tripped that I was one of the first thing I ever put on a CD in 2002. I spelled out Disrespect Me. Was what I spelled out on that one. On Actual Animal, I spelled out the phrase "and then I died."
Oh wow!
So even there, that was only a couple of years ago. It's like,
So if I can just take one brief slice of the interview to brag a bit.
Sure.
You know what I spelled on mine?
What's yours?
Vita, will you marry me?
Oh, that's so much better than any of the ones I've ever done. Oh, and my sloppy punk project, Basket Robbers, also spelled out a gigantic phrase that I can't necessarily... On Basket Robbers, album 33 RPM, Radical Punk Music, the titles of all of the songs spell out the phrase, life pretty much sucks a fat dick, thanks.
Thanks at the end?
Yeah,
there?
yeah.
Sure, why not?
It's 32 songs, so yeah.
I like it.
Yeah. But that's the whole point, is that you have these gimmicks. At that point, I now have to write a song called She Was Looking. I now have to write a song called In the Shape of an L. And I'm no longer picking the best songs that I've got. I'm picking the ones that fit the joke. And with two of my more recent albums, Fighter Number 6 and now with Growth, it went back to that same thing that I did with Throw Money, where it's like, okay, here's all of the songs that I have to choose from. Let me just pick the 12 best ones that I have. And and so that would be, to answer your question finally, I would say that has become one of my more favorite things to do in recent history, is to just pick the best songs that I have. I will still do the gimmick stuff sometimes, though. Guaranteed there's more gimmicks coming.
A question sort of occurs. Earlier you were talking about how one of the things that was great about Songfight was that it gave you that first puzzle piece that you could sort of build around. And you're talking about how you really commit to a lot of these gimmicks.
Yes.
Do you find it hard sometimes to come up with any kind of like independent inspiration?
Not usually too much, because yes and no, I guess. Because even when
it does seem like you pursue a lot of projects where like you have to put something out or you have to stick to a gimmick,
A
or
deadline
you have to follow
helps.
someone's prompt.
A deadline helps. But if
Yeah.
I can relate to that question, by the
Yeah.
way. You know, I was doing Songfight every single title for like a year and a half
Sure.
near the end of high school, beginning of college. And for me, it kind of felt like an artistic rite of passage to let go of that and start pursuing my own stuff
Absolutely.
independently of Songfight titles. Was it the same for you?
No, and it just depends, because sometimes you like those deadlines. Sometimes you like to have that word or phrase or something that starts, and sometimes it's nice to just pick up an instrument, play it, and see what comes out. And
Yeah.
I would say that even with the prompts that January offers, I would try to use the prompts as often as possible. But it's not necessarily a song title; it's more like a BPM. So I now know, okay, I've got to do this song at 80 beats per minute if I'm going to go ahead and follow that. But one of the songs that's on Growth is from January, and I decided that there was something that was more important than the prompt that day, and that's the song that's called "I'm No Good." And it's
I think that's my favorite song on the album.
thank you. It's a very misleading title because it's called "I'm No Good," but then it's "I'm No Good at This." So it's made to sound like it's one thing when it's in reality it's another. And I'll tell you a little bit of the story of that. At the job, my wife and I work at the same day job, and semi-recently, one of the people that I was training has become an assistant to us when we do like wedding DJ gigs. I love telling the story, partially because it embarrasses the hell out of her, but partially because I'm just very proud of what she's done with that. She's this young coworker who joined us for our wedding DJ gig thing, and she's
Out of curiosity, is this the same girl who is on the latest Frontalittle Squad song?
yes, it is Mickey. Mickey, she's there's Mickey and Sylvia. We basically have a couple of, you can't really say adopted daughters, but they've chosen us and we've chosen them. That's where the
How about Honorary?
Honorary.
Can you take that one?
Honorary. Mickey was right there when I recorded that one. She requested, like, can I be present for while you're doing one of these? And I said, absolutely, you totally can. And
What a moment.
so that song is very much about Rachel's and my relationship with her, where it's kind of the family that she's chosen and that we've chosen.
Every step that we will take, there are the choices that we make. It's how we all communicate. We'll discuss.
Like, if you think about a person having like an honorary doctorate, like they didn't go to the school, but the school decides that, you know, this person has an honorary doctorate. Well, we are the honorary family that she's chosen.
Oh.
There you go.
Yeah, that was a really moving message. That was my other favorite from the album.
Yeah, well,
It was a great lead single, and your guitar work on that one is
thank you. And yeah, so our honorary daughter was right there the entire time when I was making that particular song, and I sprung that on her where she didn't realize that that was what I was writing about. And it's preserved on video because we streamed. I streamed all of the last 2 Januaries that I've done. I streamed every moment of it. Every song takes me about between 2.5 to 4 hours, but usually about 3 hours is the sweet spot. From beginning to end, it takes me about 3 hours to complete one of the songs.
You've just got it down to a process, huh?
That's the key to it. Sometimes is not to overthink it. Like, you know, having a deadline, and I was there's if you have that deadline and you don't have time to overthink it, sometimes that's when the best stuff comes out. So I've learned to kind of silence that inner critic a little bit and just kind of just trust my instincts. And then if you really don't like it, there's nothing that says you have to release it, but usually you can go back and fix it if you really want to. But like, don't get
But
don't
then
get too
it's a
precious.
sunk cost, so you might as well release
Yep,
it.
there you go. There you go. And I didn't completely finish the other thing, I suppose, either. But what I was getting at with "I'm No Good" was that the honorary daughter, one of our very young coworkers, just died of heart problems, and he was like 24.
Jesus.
And it's, again, like, you know, death follows and everything. And so she came over not knowing what to do. She came over to where to my desk, but I was in a meeting. I was not able to be there for her in that moment where the grief, but the grief happened. But then she decided that she was going to head home. And when I got the news of it, I gave her a call and was, and it's that situation. What do you say to someone who is facing that, where this is a friend and a coworker and someone that, she admired? I didn't know the guy. There's hundreds of people that work in our building, so I never met him. And like being in this unfamiliar territory to me, to be the person that she would come over to like, what do I do? How do I process this and everything? So it was a sweet moment as far as, okay, this is a role that I'm not used to. It kind of got sprung out of nowhere because, like Rachel and I don't have kids. And it was this bittersweet moment with that too, where I'm thinking, I don't really have the words for this, but I also don't want to lie to you and say that everything's going to be okay when that's not necessarily the case. But I'm here for you, and I'm sorry for your loss, and that was basically about it. And just take care. I'm glad that you took the day off. Get some rest, and that was it. And so that day, instead of following the prompt on January, I thought, I need to write about this moment, and what are better words of encouragement than what I just said on the phone.
And I never want to lie to you and offer hope when there's no proof. It's likely I will crack an awkward joke when there's no comfort in the truth. I apologize for who I am. I want to fix it, and I know that I can.
And so that's what came out, was that song. And in fact, the thing I was supposed to do that day was to sample a song, and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bypass that entirely and just write from the heart on this one. And that's what came out. Thank you.
Yeah, before you circle back around to that, and before John gets to the request, I did have one quick question.
Sure.
What would you estimate your, I was going to call it fail rate, but that's not really the right word. What would you say the ratio for stuff you've never released to released stuff is?
That is a wonderful question, and I'm actually going to give you Jonathan Mann's numbers on that. I don't know if you know about his, but he talks about this quite a bit. Jonathan Mann has been writing and recording a song like I did for January for 11 straight years now.
Right.
11 years of not missing a song per day. It's also his job now, if I'm not mistaken, though. So that doesn't hurt when it's your job. He says that his rule is 70-20-10. And he figures that about 70% of what he comes up with is okay. About 20% of it is pretty bad. And 10% is pretty good.
Huh.
I don't know that I have the same percentages necessarily, but I find that that was an interesting statistic for me. Now, as far as the unreleased stuff, if we go back to the stuff that I was writing at like age 17, I'm 45 now. If we go back to that, I release most of what, well, and then I guess this also becomes a matter of if releasing it on Patreon to patrons is the same as releasing it on an album, because there is an audience that's hearing it. In that,
do you have anything you've just not released?
Oh, hundreds. Hundreds.
Okay, like you have a vault of stuff that just no one aside from you and I guess Rachel has ever heard.
And I don't even think she's even heard all of the stuff that I wrote before she was in the picture. And she and I have been married for like 25 years in November.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. Yeah, no, I there's hundreds. I'd say that.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that it's necessarily 50%, but there's probably about 40% of the songs that I've written have probably not been put out there. But I sometimes rob the graves of my old songs, if that's not too morbid of a thing. Great example.
Who doesn't do that?
Yeah, great example of it is from the Captain S soundtrack, though. When we needed a montage song, I had an album of instrumentals that I wrote and recorded in 2.5 days back in 1995 that I called Rhythm Without Rhyme, is what I believe I called it. It's stupid. But it was like 13 instrumental compositions where I was trying to learn how to play guitar, and I'm trying to solo over it. And speaking of half, or like a percentage of 40%, I was probably hitting 40% of the notes were actually good and belonged with what I was doing. But I didn't have
I'm picturing the Guitar Hero "You Failed."
Yes,
message
every
now.
song was like, you failed miserably. And I was just experimenting and just trying to see what I could do with it. But
Did you do a cover of Take On Me where you like put it up by an octave?
oh, that was stupid. That was such a bad move. That was such a bad move. Yeah, that's one of those ones that it's out there. I did that, and that was not a good decision. It exists. That's one of them. If I was smart, I probably would remove from online. But is what it is.
I just remember you literally started it off by saying, "And yes, I did transpose it by an octave."
Yeah, 'cause,
and I don't know why I did that.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that sounds like me. I recently redid that though for No Fake Friday, where I do all of the instruments instead of just the one. And I like how that one. I like my arrangement of that song, where it's got more of a not necessarily swing, not necessarily reggae feel. It's definitely got a different feel though.
Not quite swing, not quite. Is that? Did you
No, Harrison.
Did you do a ska song?
Yeah, no, there's definitely the ska version of "Take on Me" is by Real Big Fish.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. I like that version.
And every third-rate local ska band.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I like the arrangement of how that one turned out.
It's a joke with us. Harrison always compares something to ska that has no business being compared to ska.
See, there we go.
It's a good genre that doesn't get its due.
I'm a fan of the Boss Tones.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely. And
I will educate our fan base if it's the last thing I do. Anyways, we're hitting an hour 10 at this point.
yeah, it's a little ridiculous, but that's how it tends to be.
Oh yeah. But John wanted
I told
to ask
Harrison,
you.
I am not at all concerned about us filling time, and sure enough,
There it is.
near the end of each interview, as I said, we give our interview guests a shot at our request lottery.
Oh man.
Because, it's a patron benefit, but I figure if sitting down for an hour with us to give us some content for our content mill here doesn't entitle you to a free pick, what would, right? So if you could pick one album, I know it's a tall ask, but one album that you would like to hear an hour-long deep dive into from the Poor Bill Brothers, what album would you
I've
pick
definitely
for us here?
I've got my pick because it's tattooed on my left arm.
No
It is
kidding. What do you
the
got?
name of the album is Emergency and I by the band The Dismemberment Plan. I'm a hardcore Travis Morrison fan, and he's the lead vocalist of that group. He's a little strange, but in the best of possible ways. And he and I correspond every once in a while on Gmail, like email at this point. But I think he kind of just like we're friends, but I think that he tolerates me. Would be the best way to put it. He's interesting in that he is not comfortable listening to his own music or talking about his own music a whole hell of a lot. But his, to me, is an interesting trajectory because you have the album Emergency and I by the Dismemberment Plan that is considered one of the best indie releases and like in its genre. Pitchfork gave it like a nearly perfect album review that tells you.
They're hard to impress.
They are very hard to impress. I love it, though I didn't discover it until almost a decade after it was released, and then I heard it and I fell in love with it. The tattoo that I've got on my left arm is partially to remind me to occasionally go outside of my comfort zone and to, take in new things every once in a while because they can become your new favorites. That's the reminder on that left arm too, and I think I freaked him out with the tattoo. I met him in Seattle a couple of times. I was like, "I look at the new tattoo." I was like, "Oh my god, I'm just." No, Travis could not possibly be nicer. But the other half of it is that he put out a solo album called Travistan, and they gave that a 0.0 on Pitchfork. To the point where it literally, I got a chance to interview him, a radio interview at one point. And he talks about how that pretty much ruined his solo career. Like, there were venues where he was scheduled to play that canceled the shows after that review came out.
Jesus.
So And so yeah, he's a very interesting guy as far as just who he is. But I really think that his music is interesting, and the band. I think what you would find interesting about Emergency and I is there's definitely some variety. There's some moments where this song is really super simple. This song goes for 2 minutes using a drum machine, and then the band comes in and kicks ass for 90 seconds, and it goes back to the drum machine. This one is in 5/4, and it drones on to the point of almost being boring, but not quite. It's a trip. I'll say that for sure. And it's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea, but it is well reviewed.
On that note, Glenn, tell the fine people again if they want to reach out to you. Where can they find your music? Where can they reach out to you?
I am Glenn
spiel.
Case on Glenn Case on Twitter. I'm Glenn Case on YouTube. I believe I'm Glenn Case on Facebook, where if you just put like Glenn Case as the profile, that's me. It's glenncase.com, which just redirects to my Bandcamp. February 29th was Growth, but there's another album coming out on April 1st. Again this year. It is called The One That Ended His Career 2, Electric Boogaloo. And it is for the second time, but the first, The One That Ended His Career, was also an April 1st album, and it was a home for my silly and weird songs that didn't have good homes elsewhere. This is a continuation of that concept.
Awesome. And so if our good followers will follow you on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, they'll get the lowdown on all the great torrent of Glenn Case music as it comes out, right?
Yeah, more than likely, if I remember to promote it. I hate promoting myself overall. I love putting the stuff out there, but I'm not a real big fan of continuing to. I used to overdo it,
like
especially if you are infectiously positive.
You do what you can.
God, we got to be careful. I'm going to start ranting about how awful Web 2.0 is soon.
We don't need you to rant about it. Just go and listen to the latest MC Frontalot album.
Man, does it even exist outside of social media? Does the internet exist outside of social media? Is that a thing still?
Well, if you click on a link from Facebook, it will warn
IRC
you
is
that
still
you are
alive.
venturing out of
Nice.
Facebook into the wild internet.
Yeah, well, they let you know it too.
Yeah, they'll be like, "You're leaving Facebook.
Yeah,
Careful, bring a coat. It is cold out there in the harsh
it's like
world of the internet."
You're going out into the wasteland there, like the Fallout 3, like the capital wasteland. You're heading out into there for the first time.
Well, that was a fine how do you do.
That man is impossible to control.
He is relentlessly enthusiastic about everything, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I asked him to explain one thing, and then he excitedly explains 3 other things in the lead-up.
He got in touch with me after we recorded and said, "Hey, can you cut this one bit? Because I never got around to finishing the story." So,
Okay, so he's aware of it.
yeah, he's totally aware of it. Anyway, that was a really fun conversation. I hope you listeners enjoyed it as much as we did, and I hope you enjoy listening to his music as well, because Glenn is in addition to being very prolific, he's also a very compelling songwriter. And his new stuff is available on all the streaming networks, and you should check it out. You owe it to yourselves.
Yeah, and I mean, hell, I was just excited to meet the guy for the first time in 15 years.
Anyway, big thank yous to our supporters, our listeners, and our Patreon patrons. Our good friend Ben Wright Human provided promotional art for us and also supports us on Patreon, along with my wife Vita Porabil, along with Chase DeMonte, along with Adam Herchak. We're grateful for all their support. If you want to join them in supporting us, support the creation of this show, you can visit patreon.com/playdiscpodcast to make a monthly contribution. This is always going to be completely optional, but if you do donate, you'll get benefits. We'll read your name every episode. You'll get an entry into our request lottery, where at the end of every regular episode, we roll dice to see if we get to discuss an album that was chosen by our fans. And you could have your voice added to our opening theme song, and you get access to some bonus episodes that Harrison and I have recorded about movies, about music. If you want to get in touch with us, we're not hard to find. Our email address is playdiscpodcast@gmail.com. We're also on Facebook under the name Playdisc Podcast. We're on Twitter and Instagram as @PlaydiscPodcast. And another thing you can do to help out, go give us a rating. 5 stars if you think we've earned it. If you don't think we've earned it, 5 stars anyway. Leave us a review on Apple or wherever you happen to listen to our podcast. It helps discovery. It helps people find us. Does a lot of good, and it doesn't cost you a dime. So.
Yay! Frugality!
Yay! Frugality! Next week, we have a special episode lined up. We're going to be covering Iron Maiden and their 1983 album, Peace of Mind. So if you want to hear Harrison and I get our metal on, that's where you can do it. Next week.
Your voice just
regular
screeched
episode.
like metal.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm going to go ahead and say it was both. And hope you join us next week for our next regular episode. But until then, catch you on the B-side. Yeah. And now, a quick word on copyright. Today's episode used clips from several songs by Glenn Case, namely Time, Today's News, I'm No Good, and Honorary. These songs were all written by Glenn Case, and the song clips were provided for our use courtesy of Glenn Case. For all other purposes, they are protected by a Creative Commons 3.0 Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike license. The Playdisc theme song was written and recorded by me under my stage name Jon Eric, and all other aspects of the Playdisc podcast are jointly owned by myself and Harrison Porabil, and licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Share-alike 4.0 International license. Playdisc!